What you are about to hear is the result of months of digging, a thorough investigation based on confidential sources, interviews, and a forensic deconstruction of the timeline. The evidence is mind-blowing, and it will change forever the way you perceive this family. But before we share the very first piece of incriminating evidence, do us a quick favor. Shatter that like button to assist us in the struggle for truth, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Reality Recap and hit that notification bell. I promise you won't miss a thing on this investigation. To understand the scope of the betrayal we're about to reveal, we have to travel back to the start. Before the dead and alleyway of broken dreams in Las Vegas, before the desolate wasteland of Coyote Pass, we go instead to Lehi, Utah, and to the ethic upon which the Brown family was built, the family pot. In a retro episode, Janelle made it simple. All our money goes into one account. We pay bills for all 3 houses. Out of that comes food, cars, everything is for the family. It was just about idyllic, even revolutionary in the modern era. One financial unit, one for all, and all for one, ever. Responsible family accountant Janelle worked full-time. Meri contributed through her employment. Christine, the chief homemaker, took care of the kids and the family budget. It was not an individual dollar for every bit of money earned. It was a family dollar. It was not just budgeting. It was being handled as a sacred covenant, a guarantee of their commitment to each other as well as the faith in plural marriage. We spoke to a source someone will call Esther, a former close friend of the Browns who had been especially close to Meri in those Lehi years. Esther agreed to talk with us only under strict anonymity, she recalled. In the beginning, it was everything. That pot symbolized their unity. If a car broke down, the family repaired it. If a child needed braces, the family covered it. There was no my money or your money. This filled them with immense pride, particularly Meri and Janelle, who sacrificed so much to make it work. They believed they were building something permanent, a dynasty where all members were treated exactly the same. Equality was the foundation. Each wife, each child, was to be an equal partner in this shared vision. And the system functioned only because of complete trust, complete transparency, and belief that no one would ever put themselves or their own natural children first, before the good of the entire family. Year after year, though stretched to the breaking point, the system appeared to work. Together, they brought up 12 children on this model, survived job loss, financial crises, and the day-to-day expenses of 3 families. The pot was their lifeboat, the thing that kept them afloat. But then the winds changed, and with the arrival of a 4th wife, the family pot covenant would be strained, distorted, and as our probe will demonstrate, ultimately violated. Wife number 4 brought in the start of the cracks. Robyn Sullivan arrived at the Browns in 2010 with 3 kids from her first marriage and a mountain of debt. Robyn herself acknowledged up front, "I have some debt from my previous marriage. Quite a bit of it, actually." It was the first true test of the family pot in this new configuration. Meri, Janelle, and Christine, the original wives, had spent many years building this foundation with their collective sacrifices. Now, overnight, they were supposed to take on the financial load of a new addition. To their credit, and in accordance with their faith, they consented. Robyn's debt was family debt. The pot would cover, in theory, on paper, it looked good. But soon, keen-eyed observers started noticing little, and eventually less little differences, while the first wives maintained their humble ways of life. Wife number 4 seemed to be getting some exceptions, modest at first perhaps, but perceptible, a slightly improved rental house, more often and expensive date nights with Kody gradually. There developed a trend. Quietly granted exceptions special treatment. Esther remembered one particular situation that she called a red flag the size of a billboard. Meri approached me one day. She wasn't upset, she was perplexed. The family had always operated on a strict rule: no big-ticket items purchased without consensus. Anything over a few $100s needed complete discussion. Then, out of the blue, Robyn arrives with a new top-of-the-line computer for Aurora. When Meri inquired where it came from, Robyn replied that Kody had signed off on it. Just Kody and Robyn, not the family. It was the first time a purchase went around the Council of Wives. It was a small crack, but it existed. This harmless-seeming moment was actually a sign of something greater. The process of decision-making, which was once shared by Kody with all his wives, was gradually being transferred to backroom talks between Kody and Robyn. And with the financial decisions followed the power. The 2011 relocation to Las Vegas rocked the Browns financially like an earthquake. They were displaced from their settled life, had to buy 4 brand new houses, and had to begin anew. The burden on the family pot was greater than ever. This was the time when unity and sacrifice together were of utmost importance. Janelle worked more aggressively towards her real estate business. Meri returned to school, then plunged into her LuLaRoe business. Christine, despite the household of children she was managing, began working at home. All of the wives were working hard, all feeding their money into the pot to make the vision of a 4-house cul-de-sac a reality. And then my Sisterwife's closet. Externally, it was presented as a joint family enterprise, something that would bring the wives together and earn money for all. It was intended to be the be-all and end, all of the family pot in practice. But from the outset, it was Robyn's venture. She was the creative director, the designer, the CEO in all but name, and the company needed money, a lot of money. Startup fees, stock websites, advertising, all of it siphoned directly from one source, the family pot. That meant cash Janelle had made selling homes, cash Meri earned from leggings, cash Christine made from side jobs, all being directed into Robyn's vision. A production source from the Vegas years, let's call him James, spoke with us about how the business was a regular source of off-camera attention. The other wives, particularly Janelle, just kept requesting a PFL, a profit and loss statement, James remembered. They were asking where the money was being spent, if there was any ROI whatsoever, but those discussions never reached a conclusion. Robyn would get tearful and say they didn't trust her. Kody would get angry and say they were attacking his wife. It became a topic no one could touch. They just kept contributing to it, no questions asked. It was family funds in theory when it went in. But the moment accountancy was questioned, suddenly it was Robyn's business. The business never actually took off. It struggled along, hemorrhaging funds year after year. But while the business failed, it did one thing else. It put Robyn at the forefront of a large family financial venture. It gave her a legitimate excuse to handle large amounts of money, to authorize expenditures, and to control the flow of cash. It was the perfect setup. And as our investigation uncovered, it may have also been the very mechanism Robyn used to begin funneling funds not back into the business, but into her own separate household. Then came the Coyote Pass standoff. If Vegas had been a financial earthquake, Flagstaff was a full-scale financial apocalypse. The relocation, prompted mostly by Kody and Robyn, in part so Dayton could go to college locally, was disastrous for the family's bottom line. They abandoned 4 cheap houses in a stable market and exchanged them for dispersed high-priced rentals and a huge multi-acre lot that soon became a money pit. The household pot hemorrhaged money incessantly. On camera, Kody incessantly griped about being rental poor. Janelle ended up in an RV to economize. Meri leased a huge house she could hardly afford. Christine was miserable, ignored, and anxious about finances. And Robyn. She and Kody moved into a sprawling $1 million mansion, equipped with a 5-car garage and a wooded backyard. The optics were impossible to ignore. The wife who had walked in with nothing now resided in a mansion, while the women who had given up everything to accumulate the family fortune were left scattered and struggling. For Christine, this was the breaking point. In 2021, she made the courageous choice to walk away from Kody and head back to Utah. But leaving a plural marriage wasn't as easy as grabbing bags, not when the money was so deeply intertwined. The sticking point, Coyote Pass. Christine had sunk her life savings into that land. Money that she received from the sale of her Las Vegas house had gone straight into the family kitty, which was subsequently used to assist in paying for the property. She felt strongly that she was entitled to her share. But sources claim Kody and Robyn didn't share that view. And this is where the plot thickens. Determined not to be financially erased from the family she had given decades to, Christine brought in legal backup. A source extremely close to the case, a legal professional, we'll call counsel, gave our investigation explosive details you won't hear anywhere else. It started as a negotiation, not a lawsuit, counsel said. Christine's lawyers were merely seeking an accounting of the family assets to determine her rightful share of the Coyote Pass purchase price. They asked for years of records from the family's main account, the family pot, to follow the money from the Vegas sales to the Flagstaff acquisitions. It was routine practice. But the first reaction from Kody and Robyn's camp? Complete stonewalling. They would not deliver full unredacted statements. Why the secrecy? If the finances had been open and shared, what was there to hide? Nevertheless, Christine's attorneys persisted. Christine's lawyers claimed that without a complete picture financially, a proper settlement could not be negotiated. There was weeks of going back and forth before they eventually made a formal motion to compel, essentially compelling Kody and Robyn to either produce the records or appear before a judge. Eventually, and very grudgingly, they did. A box full of documents was delivered to Christine's lawyer's office. Hidden in that box was a time bomb ticking. At the beginning, we were just looking for large property transactions, counsel said. But my paralegal, a clever young lady, picked up on something unusual. She said, "Who is Alice Sullivan? And why is she receiving a $750 check every month?" Initially, I didn't know the name. Then we cross-checked. Alice Sullivan is Robyn's mother. Shortly afterward, we noticed another name, Terrell Sullivan, Robyn's sister. She was getting payments too, although not as regular, but sizable. It was mind-boggling. This was no longer about land. This was about potential embezzlement of family money. With that revelation, the dominoes of justice started to tumble. What began as Christine's battle for her rightful share of Coyote Pass had uncovered a covert financial scheme that had been secretly operating for years, beneath the noses of the other wives. The bombshell, how the deception was constructed, following detailed accounts given by our legal source. Here is the reconstruction. Between 2016 and 2021, the latter Vegas years, and the chaotic Flagstaff relocation, a constant dribble of inexplicable payments departed from the Brown family's central pot and went straight into Robyn's biological family. Our team examined the data with care, and as ever, the deception is in the details. Alice Sullivan, Robyn's mother, the payments to Robyn's mom were regular, basically a monthly check, $750 every month. For 5 consecutive years, occasionally the memo line would say, "Family support," occasionally helping hand, and most ominously, a few were just labeled loan repayments. Do the math, $750 per month, 12 months, equals $9,000 per year. In 5 years, that is $45,000. And where did that money come from? From the pot, from Janelle's real estate commissions, from Meri's LuLaRoe income, from Christine's house sale, from funds that were supposed to go toward mortgages, children's needs, family emergencies, and shared expenses. Instead, $45,000 was siphoned to Robyn's mother, Terrell Sullivan, Robyn's sister. These payments to Robyn's sister were less regular, but tended to be higher lump sums. Our investigation found at least 8 such payments over the 5-year period. They varied from $1,500 to one breathtaking $10,000 payment in the spring of 2019, in the middle of the financial meltdown, when the family was struggling in Flagstaff. Memo lines were general assistance, personal loan, or sometimes nothing at all. Together, the irregular payments to Terrell added up to more than $35,000. The bottom line added up, at least $45,000 to Robyn's mother, at least $35,000 to her sister, over $80,000 of the Brown family's shared money, money that belongs to 4 wives and 18 children, flowed directly into Robyn's personal relatives' pockets. The revelation stunned Christine's lawyers. But the figures themselves weren't the only shock. What made this tragic was the timing, because if you array the payments against what we all saw on television, the narrative they provide is one of tragic betrayal. The ultimate betrayal, a daughter's pain versus a mother's payout there. Perhaps is no story more heartbreaking in Sisterwife's history than that of Isabel Brown's struggle with scoliosis. We saw this courageous little girl suffer from pain braces and recurrent doctor visits for years. Christine struggled valiantly to get her daughter into the best care available. By 2020, things had come to a head. Isabel required a complicated, specialized operation to realign the serious curve in her spine. The operation was not performed in Flagstaff. It involved traveling all the way to New Jersey to one of the best surgeons in the nation. The expense, operation, travel, and 6 weeks of recovery out of state was exorbitant. Insurance, as Christine tearfully confessed, would not pay for it all during the show. Christine tearfully explained, "I need to be the one to pay for her surgery. We will be raising money hand over fist. We need a down payment. It is a lot of money. She was frantic, trying to sell her LuLaRoe products, doing whatever it took to come up with enough to give her daughter a pain-free existence. And at this same time, Christine went to the family pot. She sought assistance. Our source, counsel, verified a tidbit that will make you fume. In interviews with Christine, counsel remembered her sharing a sorrowful remembrance from summer 2020, when she was desperately trying to raise money for Isabel's surgery. Christine knew she was short around $2,000 on a pre-op travel cost. She asked for assistance from the communal pot, held by Kody and Robyn, the checkbook holders of the core family account. What she received was rejection. She was informed funds were too tight. She was informed the pandemic and the disaster of the Flagstaff move meant there was no additional money available. She was rejected. She was rejected again. $2,000 for her daughter's needed medical treatment was deemed impossible, broken hearted, and left behind. Christine had no other option but to borrow the money from a family member. Now, let's go back to the bank records. Let's examine the timeline. Place those exact same months over top of the payments made to Robyn's family. 6 months prior to Christine being informed the family was too impoverished to cover her daughter's surgery, over $7,000 had already been channeled to Robyn's mother and sister. Take it in. No money for Isabel's life-altering treatment, but money for Robyn's mom. Nothing for an agony-stricken daughter, but thousands stashed away for Robyn's sister. That is the double cross that stings more than any price tag. When one wife was pleading for assistance to save her child, another was quietly draining the family coffers to finance her own kin. And it wasn't just Christine. Consider Janelle struggling to live in an RV on the desolate Coyote Pass land in order to economize for the family. Month by month, she suffered harsh winters in a mobile home. Meanwhile, $750 checks were still being signed to Alice Sullivan out of the very account Janelle was living in sacrifice to defend. Or Meri, sitting alone in her large home, her only financial input into the family coming from her company, something she herself had created. That money, as well, was going to compensate outsiders who had no actual connection with the family she had helped build. This wasn't careless bookkeeping. This wasn't merely mismanagement. This, per our sources, was a calculated multi-year course of financial dishonesty, engineered by Robyn and enabled, knowingly or by willful blindness, by Robyn Brown. A course of action that put Robyn's family of origin over the wives and children that Kody had vowed to protect and care for. The reality was on paper. The fact had been established. But the battle had hardly begun. Because once faced with this incriminating evidence, Robyn's defense lawyers presented an explanation so outrageous, so insulting, that it added yet another sensational twist to this tale of treachery, and that is where we left off after the break. Welcome back to Reality Recap. On the last break, we uncovered the bombshell contained within the Brown family's bank statements, more than $80,000 in payments made from the joint family fund to Robyn Brown's mother and sister over the course of 5 years. We revealed the devastating disparity. Christine Brown was denied a mere $2,000 for Isabel's spinal surgery, while thousands flowed into Robyn's relatives' coffers. Here, we analyze the aftermath. What occurs when the secrecy unravels under scrutiny? We dissect the defense's astonishing explanation, the counterattack by Christine's attorneys, and the verdict that shook the very foundation of the Brown family, the brazenness of Robyn's defense. Confronted with indisputable bank records establishing an overt, sustained pattern of expenditures, Kody and Robyn's lawyers had no choice but to offer a rebuttal. Their explanation, outlined by our insider counsel, was audacious and stunning in its simplicity. The $80,000, they argued, was not a gift, or an allowance, or an embezzlement. Rather, it was repayment of outstanding family loans. The tale they wove was this: years prior, during and before Robyn's earliest years with the Browns, her family had been in financial distress. Her mother Alice and her sister Tara-Lise had allegedly loaned Robyn significant amounts of money, paying for her divorce, keeping her financially afloat, and maintaining her 3 children. In their account, Robyn was not using the family funds for her advantage. She was merely paying off debts, fulfilling her commitment, and doing her moral obligation to those who supported her in the first place. Counsel called the moment that this defense originally emerged frankly insulting. The reasoning suggested that by adopting Robyn, the Browns had also adopted her financial burdens. They framed it as heroic Robyn dipping into the family pot was only repaying old debts. They attempted to reframe the shared account as pool as much for the Browns' future as for erasing the past debts of its members. It seemed credible on the surface, self-serving, but credible. But even the best arguments fall apart without evidence. Christine's lawyers responded at once with a witheringly simple demand. Produce the papers. If these loans actually existed, there would be a trail of paper. Where were the agreements of loan? Where was a promissory note? Even a simple signed instrument specifying terms, amounts, payment schedules. There was nothing. First, where were the bank statements from Alice and Tyrillus indicating those original huge transfers to Robyn? If they did, in fact, lend her thousands of dollars, there would be some trace of it somewhere. None appeared. Second, where were the texts, emails, or some type of written communication regarding these so-called loans? In the digital age today, a financial transaction of that magnitude between family members should leave at least some electronic footprint, but rather silence. As counsel summarized, it was a house of cards when pressed for even a shred of evidence to support the loan scenario. They had absolutely nothing. Their defense was that it had all been informal, just a family handshake agreement. An $80,000 handshake agreement that strains credulity. Christine's group maintained that without documentation, these were not actual loan payments. They were unrecorded, unauthorized cash transfers. And when that many illegal transfers are made out of a common account to relatives of a single woman, it ceases to look like repayment and begins to resemble something else altogether: unjust enrichment. That words, unjust enrichment, have immense legal significance. It refers to a situation where one side benefits unfairly at the expense of another. And that is precisely what Christine's lawyers alleged was occurring. To make their point, they even took from the Browns' own background. Janelle, for instance, had gone through bankruptcy early in her marriage to Kody. That debt became a family issue, openly discussed and addressed transparently. When the family helped Meri with the down payment for her bed and breakfast, it became a full multi-episode arc filled with intense conversations among the wives. For all its dysfunction, the Brown family had always established a precedent of tackling big money matters publicly and collectively. But there was this $80,000 loan to Robyn's family members, imposed allegedly in installments over 5 years, and never once was it spoken of. Not to the wives whose communal money was being utilized, and not to the cameras that captured every other hardship. The loan defense was not only thin, it was a desperate bid to retroactively rationalize an undeclared financial channeling that had at last surfaced. It was an after-the-fact tale designed to explain years of distraction, and when placed under actual scrutiny, it fell apart. The insiders subsequently started connecting the dots. The bank records had reported the what, the botched defense uncovered the how, but the deeper question, the why, came from those who saw the dynamics behind the scenes. Collectively, their stories paint a terrifying picture of a gradual but calculated concentration of financial power. We went back to James, an insider who produced during the Vegas and Flagstaff days. He explained how Robyn and Kody created a system to protect her spending. James said, "There was an unwritten rule. You could film Kody complaining about the family being broke. You could film Janelle worrying about the budget. You could film Christine fretting about bills. But the moment anyone challenged Robyn's spending, that was forbidden. If a wife brought it up, Robyn would close down, cry, tell her she was under attack, and claim everyone thought she was a gold digger. That was her ammunition, and it worked. It always provoked Kody's protective nature. He'd blow up, call the wives jealous, and the discussion would immediately wither. Soon enough, the other wives, and even the producers, learned not to touch it. It was simpler to just avoid talking about it. This manipulation produced what James called a financial black box around Robyn. She remained untouchable when compared to the other wives in terms of accountability. And that impunity, James charged, is precisely what enabled the consistent payments to her family to go by undetected. James chimed in, "Consider this. Robyn and Kody had a joint account directly connected to the big family pot. They had the checkbook, the debit cards. Okay, yes. Janelle was the mathematician. but Kody and Robyn made the purchases. A $750 check to Alice Sullivan won't even make Kody flinch if Robyn says it is for family purposes. He trusted her absolutely. He wasn't auditing the books. He was too busy acting patriarch. It was the perfect configuration for something like this to go on unobstructed. From yet another perspective. The Browns' family friend Esther verified the change she saw in Robyn following the Vegas relocation and her legal marriage to Kody. Esther stated, "In Lehigh, Robyn was still the new girl. She was different. But after she had that marriage certificate from Meri, everything changed. There was a new confidence, bordering on entitlement. She quit discussing the family's money as ours and began calling it our money. Hers and Kody's, she started to view the other wives less like partners and more like, well, financial backers for her and Kody's lifestyle. The family pot stopped being a shared resource that everyone dipped into equally. Instead, it morphed into the main bank account for Kody, Robyn, and their children, one the other wives were simply expected to keep funding. This shift in mindset is crucial to understanding the bigger picture. If indeed Robyn started viewing the family account as she and Kody's own family home fund, then sending money to her mother or sister would not have been a case of stealing from her sister wives. To herself, she would have been able to rationalize it as spending her family's money on her family. To outsiders, the act seems like a sudden betrayal, but this hypothesis provides a psychological rationale. It is the tale of creeping entitlement, supported by a husband who would not admit what was occurring, and by a family system that did not encourage confrontation. Piece by piece, a grand theory of financial collapse starts taking shape. The lingering question is this: why did Robyn's relatives need so much money? Were they always in financial trouble, or was there something bigger behind it? This is where the story shifts from confirmed reports to what we'll call the grand unified theory of the Browns' financial downfall. Theory A, the My Sister Wife's Closet bailout. We do know that My Sister Wife's Closet failed economically, but suppose it was worse than everyone thought. Suppose the company wasn't merely losing money, but going underwater in debt. The theory is that those payments to Alice and Terilli were never for discretionary spending at all. Rather, they might have served as straw lenders. The scam works as follows. Robyn needed money for her struggling business, but didn't want to have to go to Janelle and the others with it. So she siphoned money through her mom and sister, who in turn loaned it back to the business. That way, Robyn could say she'd obtained outside investors, giving the company a more stable image than it actually had, all while quietly recycling family money, a shell game classic. This would account for such vague memo lines as personal loan and the absence of documentation. It was specifically constructed to have no paper trail. Theory B, the Flagstaff land grab. The relocation to Flagstaff never held up financially. Kody's explanations kept changing, tenuous at best. But maybe there was something more to it. By 2017-2018, Robyn might already have glimpsed the family's framework breaking down. She realized she needed to ensure her and her kids' future beyond the other wives. Flagstaff relocation was the ideal disguise. By selling the stable Vegas properties and causing financial disruption, she and Kody could pool the family's liquid holdings. The $80,000 diverted to her kin might have been an illicit rainy day stash, hidden beyond the books, stored securely by the people she knew she could trust. When the dust had settled, Robyn and Kody would own the biggest house, the best property, and a secret cash stash, all unbeknownst to everyone. What now appears to be a wild gamble suddenly appears to be a cold-hearted strategy. Whether intended to support a struggling business or accumulate a secret nest egg, both hypotheses lead to the same conclusion. The money transfers were not spontaneous acts of charity. They were part of an extended plan to reallocate the collective wealth of the Brown family for the use of a single wife, and only a single wife. The verdict and the vicious clawback. The Coyote Pass dispute ultimately escalated to a full-blown forensic financial audit, ending up in mediation and finally in the face of a judge for binding arbitration. The bank statements were uncovered. The failed loan defense was presented. Christine's team unveiled the horrific chronology of Isabel's surgery. The judgment, as counsel portrayed it, was quick and merciless. Counsel paraphrased the judge, "The handshake loan tale didn't impress me." In any partnership where property is shared, the judge clarified, there is a fiduciary obligation to be open. Secretly channeling over $80,000 to one's own family members without paper trail or other partner's knowledge constituted an outright violation of that obligation. He did not mince words. The decision held that those $80,000 payments were unjust enrichment for Robyn and an equal loss for the remainder of the family partnership. The argument that the money had been spent to pay off Robyn's individual debts was rejected immediately. The judge argued that if she did owe debts, she ought to have used her own income if she had any or freely solicited aid from the family as precedent provided. What she could not do was draw communal funds unilaterally for personal debt. And then there was the clawback. The judge handed down a concise but forceful ruling. The entire amount of the documented payments, all of $82,400, was to be considered an advance, a draw on Robyn's share of the family's assets. In the ultimate Coyote Pass buyout math for Christine, this $82,400 went straight onto the tab Kody and Robyn had to Christine. A $1 for $1 clawback. Christine's lawyer described it as a full vindication. The judge's decision was unequivocal. You secretly drew this money out of the family fund for your own household's use. Now, you have to give it back to those whom you took it from. The message couldn't have been more direct. The family fund belonged to all of the Browns, not Robyn alone. This wasn't just a financial success for Christine. It was a victory on a moral level. It legally validated what fans had long speculated about, that the scales were tipped, that one wife was operating on her own terms. The clawback was the system's attempt, after 10 years of disproportion, to at last balance things out. The aftermath, a family torn apart by greed. With this secret exposed, everything we've witnessed these last few years takes on new meaning. Janelle's struggle in the RV wasn't merely about a lack of housing. It was the instinct of the family's sharpest financial mind, recognizing that the numbers didn't make sense, that money was vanishing into a void she couldn't trace. Trailer life was her act of radical protest, her means of stopping the bleeding that could not be seen. Christine's leaving wasn't just about wanting intimacy or love from Kody. It was betrayal, seeing her children suffer after being informed that money intended for them was redirected. Her children were no longer regarded as being equally to Robyn's. Meri was not only lonely emotionally, she was lonely financially. She invested the earnings of her hard labor in what she thought was a shared pot, to find later that her sacrifices were being used to fund the upkeep of the household of the woman who had taken her place. And Kody and Robyn's resentment, their repeated story of abandonment and betrayal by the others, now sounds different. Was it the hurt of being left behind or the anger of being outed? The wrath of two individuals whose clandestine preferential system finally fell apart under scrutiny. The Brown family wasn't destroyed by plural marriage. It was destroyed by greed, by the gradual erosion of its original value, equality. One wife, abetted by her husband, supposedly concluded her needs and her blood kin were more important than the rights of the collective. And in doing so, they didn't merely destroy a budget, they destroyed a family, a faith, and the trust of millions who once had faith in their dream. The ripple effect. This saga wasn't over with the clawback ruling. There is always more. Just in recent weeks, Reality Recap learned of a new tip about the Browns' complicated finances, and this one involves Janelle. After discovering the specifics of Christine's legal victory and the unjust enrichment determination, Janelle has allegedly commenced her own financial audit. For years, she was the primary breadwinner, investing hundreds of thousands into the household fund. Now, sources claim Janelle believes the $82,400 discovered in Christine's case is merely the tip of the iceberg. Her hypothesis, the 5-year time frame reviewed in Christine's case, just so happened to be one of the family's more meager periods. The real damage, Janelle's team allegedly believes, was done during the Las Vegas years when money was flowing more freely from her career and Meri's thriving business. According to our insider, Janelle is now pushing for a full 10-year forensic audit of the family's accounts. She is no longer fighting for her share of Coyote Pass, but for an accurate accounting of what she believes is a sizable missing fund that went missing under Kody and Robyn's stewardship. Which is to say that this battle is far from over. In fact, it is becoming even fiercer and nastier. What does those bank records hold in store? How deep does the rabbit hole go? Christine's win wasn't the end. It was just the first shot in a larger war for economic justice. And there you have it, the structure of a secret, a story of misdirection, rationalization, and finally, revelation. From the holy agreement of the family pot to the cold hard realities of digits on a bank ledger, the evidence we have from our sources is damning. One family's dream become another family's private piggy bank. This probe rested on the courage of insiders who were prepared to expose what they felt was a huge injustice. And so, we leave it in your hands, the Sisterwives fanbase. Do you believe the lone tale? Or do you concur with the judge's conclusion of unjust enrichment? What do you think of our integrated theory was the cash related to my sisterwife's closet, or an undeclared escape fund? And what do you think of these latest reports concerning Janelle's call for a complete audit? We want your opinion, your breakdown, your response. It is a conversation, and all voices count. Thanks for riding shotgun through this deep dive. If you think this story had to be revealed, help spread it to a fellow Sisterwives enthusiast. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. The next inquiry is already in transit. This is Reality Recap, signing off.